I'm sad for him, and I'm really sad for Robyn's kids. And like, if I had a conversation with any of them, I'd be like,
I don't know what space Robyn is in, and I don't know what space we'll be in 2 or 3 years. I almost feel like turning the table and saying, well, do you want to get back in plural marriage?
It had been months since Kody Brown last laid eyes on his children without tension hanging in the air thick enough to cut with a knife. The formerly inseparable family, which had been presented to millions by TLC, had cracked under the strain of lawsuits, public criticism, and financial scandal. Sister Wives fans had been witnessing in awe as the patriarch's relationships with his children became more strained, leading to courtroom fights and public embarrassment that no reality television script could have conceived. Now, in a move that few could have predicted, Kody was boldly, almost desperately, trying to recreate the connection he had destroyed. The whispers first started quieting. Insiders indicated that there had been discreet meetings, clandestine conversations, and hesitant attempts at reconciling. But where everything Brown is concerned, the public was keen to find out. Was it possible for Kody to mend what he had broken? According to sources close to the family, Kody's early attempts were cringeworthy, almost agonizingly so. Text messages were ignored, calls went unreturned, and the trust of the children appeared almost impossible to regain. For years, Kody had been both father and reality television personality. But as the cameras turned off and the flash of the spotlight receded, the finalities of his decisions were glaringly apparent. His children, who once were playful and uninhibited in front of the cameras, now greeted him with reserve, suspicion, and, in several instances, outright hostility. Observers have characterized Kody's demeanor during these early interactions as tentative. He was said to spend hours preparing to speak with his children, meticulously considering each word, and attempting to predict their response. But even with his careful planning, there was no surety that the family he loved so much would react. Some insiders even went as far as to suggest that Kody's very presence could reopen wounds, and the fragile process of reconnecting would be even more difficult. In a private sit-down with a source, Kody conceded that he realized the severity of the damage. "I know I've messed up, and I know I've hurt them," he whispered. "I just want them to know I am still here, that I still care, and that I want to be a better father." It was a glimpse into a sensitive side of Kody Brown. One fans didn't get to see much, amidst the drama, conflicts, and court fights. And yet, as promising as this moment seemed, the question was, would his kids take this olive branch, or would years of betrayal and hurt make it too late for reconciliation? As the Brown family got set for what would turn out to be a series of passionate and emotionally charged interactions, the Globe held its breath, speculating whether this endeavor at reforming connections would work or explode in stunning fashion. Little did everyone realize the coming months would bring secrets, clashes, and emotional revelations that would challenge Kody in ways that even the most explosive episodes of Sister Wives had never hinted. And as the initial meeting loomed, tensions were already building, laying the groundwork for a tale that would stun viewers and upend everything they believed they knew about Kody and his clan. The time had finally come. Kody Brown was ready to confront the children he'd been estranged from for months. The air was charged with tension, and the traditional Brown family cameras were nowhere to be seen, leaving only the stark, unvarnished reality of what was to come. The initial encounter was at a third location, away from the comfortable confines of the family home. Family friends said Kody was jittery but set. He paced the room, going over what he needed to convey, attempting to walk the fine line between honesty and delicacy. Every second of hesitation seemed to be amplified. Every look from the children analyzed for subtext. When the children arrived, the air was tense. Some of them greeted him warily, others with sheer distrust, their faces showing the emotional barriers they had created through months of separation. The first phrases were hesitant, courteous, but weighted with unasked questions. "Why now? Do you mean it? Can we believe you?" Kody started slowly, carefully choosing his words. He owned up to past errors and accepted the hurt he had inflicted, attempting to show true remorse. "I know I've let you down," he stuttered. "And I know that words aren't enough. I just hope we can begin rebuilding step by step." The responses were varied. Some children relaxed a little, catching a glimpse of sincerity in his words. Others stood reserved, arms folded and faces set in a combination of disappointment and wariness. It was later described by observers as a volatile mix of hope and remaining ill will. a primrose path in which one misstep might unravel any advancement. Old scores were settled in the discussion. Remembrance of past missed markers, broken promises, and humiliation in public was dredged up, making the meeting emotionally charged. Kody listened attentively, validating each concern without defensiveness, attempting to demonstrate that he was actually committed to change. Sources close to the family report that the discussion lasted more than 2 hours, punctuated by moments of silence as dense as the words themselves. For Kody, it was an humbling experience, one that made him realize not only the errors of his past, but the actual impact they had on the children he loved. By the end of the meeting, though no miracle reconciliation had taken place, a small chink in the wall of distance started to appear. A hesitant smile, a softened look, and tentative acceptance suggested that there could be a way forward. But it would be long, arduous, and complicated by emotional challenges. The world outside was still oblivious to the intimate challenges being acted out in real life. Fans of Sister Wives could only speculate about what was happening behind closed doors. But the events of this first encounter would set the tone for a series of emotionally charged meetings, revelations, and confrontations that promised to redefine Kody's relationship with his children. Just days after the initial meeting, Kody's attempt to rebuild bonds faced its first real test. The children, however, had been planned for by their family, who arranged a more public celebration in a community center. This was intended to give the children greater freedom to be themselves, without the burden of being in a house that was so full of history and so much anxiety. As soon as Kody arrived, it was evident the air was thick. The children, still a little more relaxed, but still wary, watched him closely. Every step he took towards them appeared intentional, but every movement also had a tinge of nervousness. Was the approach correct? Would they turn him down again? The initial few minutes were innocently serene. Lightweight inquiries related to school, recreation, and buddies passed, but the tension never dissipated from the room. Onlookers observed that the children's body language vacillated between curiosity and reservation. Some folded their arms tightly, others twitched uneasily in their seats, not wanting to let him get close emotionally. Then, a shocking revelation rocked the room. One of the kids, obviously upset, mentioned a secret that had been quietly brewing in the background, a dramatic moment from the past that Kody had not attended. A milestone that had left deep emotional wounds. The room fell silent, and Kody's expression showed a combination of guilt and shock. I didn't know how much that hurt you," he confessed, his voice shaking slightly. "I should have been there, and I can't undo that, but I want to do better. I need to do better." The kids responded differently. Some melted at his confession, finally feeling heard. Others were still dubious, their voices strained with emotion. "Words won't do it, Dad," one of the kids spoke up, breaking the tension. "We have to see it. We have to feel it. It is actions that count more than anything you can say." Kody nodded, getting the full import of the words. It was not merely a challenge. It was a challenge to responsibility. This was the moment, some say, that turned the tide. The kids were no longer mere bystanders in his reconciliation attempt. They were cooperative builders of their own emotional fences. As the evening went on, talk turned to smaller, more intimate encounters. Kody was careful to listen, not merely talk, and the kids started to dip their toes in, extending small acceptance gestures, a forced smile now and again, a suppressed laugh somewhere. Slight indications that advancement, though tenuous, was feasible. To the end of the day, although the atmosphere still lingered with unresolved tension, there had been a subtle change. The revelation had ripped open old sores indeed, but it also paved the way for honesty and openness, a platform on which Kody could start to rebuild trust, one small step at a time. Family sources indicate that this showdown was a turning point, a moment that would either signal the start of true reconciliation or underscore the work that lay ahead. And as Kody departed the group, one thing kept running through his mind. Building bridges was much more complicated than he had ever thought, and time itself would decide whether or not his attempts could actually work. Determined to demonstrate to his kids that he was serious about rebuilding trust, Kody decided to try a bold tack. Rather than waiting for informal opportunities, he organized a focused father-child retreat, a weekend packed with activities intended to build connection, understanding, and he hoped, healing. The retreat started with a low-key group activity, hiking in a local nature reserve. The clean air and physical exercise were intended to help create shared experiences that could lighten some of the emotional barriers. At first, the kids were reluctant. Others trailed sullenly behind with arms folded, and others barely spoke at all. Kody attempted to thaw the ice. He told personal stories about his own childhood and blunders, hoping to make himself more human to them. "I know I've screwed up," he said. "I haven't always been the best decision maker, and I've failed you, but I want to do better from today on." For a fleeting instant, it worked. One of the younger kids asked a hesitant question about his life before marriage, and it was enough to bring a rare laugh out of Kody. It was the first sincere smile between father and child in months, a small but significant breakthrough, but the weekend wasn't smooth sailing by any stretch. Later, in a team Zen building session, feelings boiled over. One of the younger kids accused Kody of prior financial choices and not being there, exposing the quietly seething resentment. "You weren't there when it counted," they yelled. "All this vacation, it doesn't alter that." Kody stood there for a moment, visibly shaken, but he did not back down. Instead, he took in the hurt. "You are right," he said softly. "I wasn't there, and I can't alter the past. But I'm here now, and I want to do everything I can to make things right going forward." The confrontation, though fierce, had a paradoxical effect. By confronting the anger and disappointment openly, Kody provided a space for honest discussion. The children, though still guarded, began to express their feelings more candidly. There was crying, frustrations, and even laughter, emotions pent up for far too long. By the final day of the retreat, however, observers saw a telltale shift. Though trust was not yet back in full measure, experiences shared had opened doors for bonding. Kody emerged from the weekend fatigued, but optimistic, understanding that repairing relationships was a marathon rather than a sprint. Insiders went on to disclose that the daring act had also ignited discussions amongst the children themselves. Some talking about what they were willing to forgive, others debating the amount of effort Kody was actually making. It was raw, emotional, and sometimes messy. But it was authentic. The stage was then set for the next act. Would Kody be able to take these small victories and translate them into long-term change, or would the burden of old transgressions prove too great to bear? Just when it appeared that Kody was beginning to make small steps toward reconciliation, a shocking revelation had a way of shredding fragile gains. During a quiet evening discussion, one of the older children hesitated before speaking, clearly wrestling with whether to share what they knew. "Kody, there's something you need to know," the child began, voice trembling. "It's about some things that happened while you were away." Kody froze. He had known that over the years, communication gaps had provided ample opportunities for misunderstandings, but he could not have foreseen the magnitude of what was about to be laid out. The child went on to say that when Kody was away, some of the younger siblings experienced financial and emotional strains that were never clearly explained to them. They felt manipulated by time and perplexed by promises that were broken. Although the information was piecemeal, the message itself was unmistakable. Old anger and suspicion still lingered deep in the family's heart. The news shook Kody. For an instant, the burden of his own choices, the lost possibilities, the broken promises, the family strife he'd believed he'd resolved, seemed to crush him. "I didn't know how much that impacted you all," he confessed, words strained with emotion. "I thought I could mend in a hurry, but now I see it is going to take a whole lot longer, more patience and understanding." This was a turning point. Undefended Kody understood that repairing relationships wasn't merely about quality time or retreat planning. It involved transparency, accountability, and listening in ways he hadn't previously. He vowed to respond to questions truthfully even when it was painful, and to offer the stability and advice the children had long required. For children, the secret was both authenticating and hurts to unused confirmed and justified suspicion and complaints they had long harbored silently. Yet it provided an open door to discussion. They felt they were being heard differently than before, a validation that what they felt and experienced was important. By the close of night, however, tension still existed. But a quiet change was observed. Undefended Kody's readiness to face these hard realities started to erode the walls between him and his children. It was a nervous peace, tenuous but promising, a testament to the fact that real reconciliation would require something more than grand gestures. As the family set out to meet the days to come, everyone was aware that the road would be fraught with trials of patience, honesty, and courage. Undefined, would Kody be able to maintain this new openness, or would entrenched habits interfere and try to undo the fragile gains made? The next morning, the air was charged in the house. Kody was attempting to keep himself in calm demeanor, but one of the grown children, frustrated for years with what they saw as broken promises and favoritism, had finally concluded that it was time to speak directly to him. "Dad, we need to talk, right now," the eldest said, eyes clashing with Kody's in a combination of anger and pain. Kody nodded, steeling himself. He had dealt with battles in the past, but the ferocity in their eyes told him this discussion was not going to be simple. "You've spoken a great deal over the years, but your actions do not resemble your words," the child started. "We've felt neglected, manipulated, and left to handle the destruction, while you concentrated on other activities. Why should we take anything you have to say seriously now?" The words struck Kody like a punch. He parted his lips to justify himself, but the reality of their emotions was unmistakable. He knew that justification, explanation, or attributing blame to circumstances would not repair this tear. It needed humility, responsibility, and a commitment to listen earnestly. Working up his courage, Kody spoke, voice firm but weighed down with emotion. "I know I've let you down, I know I've hurt you, and I can't undo the past. But I am going to do what is right. Beginning today, I need to regain your trust, one step at a time, and I will do whatever it takes to make you know I am committed." The room went quiet. The burden of his admission hung in the air, and for an instant, it seemed as if the pressure might boil over into outright conflict. But instead, the adult child exhaled slowly, a mixture of relief and lingering resentment in their expression. "This isn't going to be easy," they said finally, "and it's going to take a lot of time, but I'm willing to try if you're really committed." Kody nodded solemnly. That moment marked a subtle but significant turning point for the first time. He wasn't merely a promiser as a father. He was an actively listening father, recognizing previous errors and calling himself to account. Yet even with this milestone, Kody understood that trust needed to be worked for every week, month, perhaps even years. Each choice, each encounter, would now bear significance well beyond anything he had previously known. Anytime the family convened for breakfast, a silent understanding hung in the air. The struggle to come to a peace of the heart had been initiated, and there would be additional tests to follow. Following his close confrontation with the older generation of adult children, Kody set his attention on the younger generation of the family. Winning over the trust of teenagers and preteens, he soon discovered, would be a whole other ballgame. The youngest had spent her childhood observing uncertainty, money squabbles, and perpetual changes in family dynamics. Their distrust wasn't reserved for Kody, it was leveled at the whole system that had consistently failed them. One afternoon, Kody attempted a small overture, proposing a family outing, something he hoped would build a bridge of togetherness. "Let's go to the lake today," he suggested, smiling warily. "Just us. No interruptions, no cameras, nothing but a day together." The youngest studied him, narrowed eyes revealing both curiosity and suspicion. "Why now, after all these years of ignoring us?" One of them questioned. Kody swallowed hard. "Because I want to be better. Because I want to prove to you that I can be here for you, not just as your dad, but as someone you can count on." Their reaction wasn't swift. Silence hung in the air for a few anxious moments, before the child grumbled, "We'll see if you really mean it." At the lake, moments of tension were common. Kody fumbled for the right words, the right tone, even the right activities to interest them. One child fished, another skipped rocks, and a couple of them sat on the bank with arms crossed, watching the water. Yet, small wins did occur. A laugh together over a fish that got away, a grudging compliment to Kody's ability to fish, and brief moments of quiet discussion about school and friends. Every little exchange was a fissure in the wall of distrust erected over years. By the evening, even though still guarded, the youngest had started to experience a part of Kody they hadn't seen in many years, a dad who was making an effort to reconnect. Kody knew this was only the start. Establishing relationships with the youngest generation would require steady patience, unshakable commitment, and, above all else, the capacity to listen without defensiveness. The day at the lake concluded with a reticent but genuine hug from the youngest. It was a small thing, but in the fractured world of family relationships, even the smallest forward movement was colossal. Restoring emotional connections was one battle, but the specter of past financial scandals hung over everything. Kody's efforts to reconnect were immediately made more difficult by resentment over financial decisions, arguments over bills and accounts, and accusations of favoritism that had divided the family for years. Tension filled the air during a family dinner. Chats about school, hobbies, and weekend activities soon turned to the uncomfortable. "Why did you spend money on that when we needed help here?" one of the children asked bluntly. Kody hesitated, attempting to find the correct words. "I know I made errors. I did not always manage money the way I should have, and I realize why you are angry." His confession was received with indifference. Some nodded hesitantly, valuing the candor, while others rolled their eyes, doubtful that his words would become reality. The eldest children were the most difficult to reclaim. They had experienced court wars, media attention, and financial turmoil that had lasting effects. One night, the oldest confronted Kody outright. "You continually tell me you want to set things right. But when, after the house, after the finances, it always feels like it is never about us. It is always about saving face." Kody breathed deeply. "I know it appears that way, and I won't deny that it does. But I want to assure you that earning back your trust is my current focus. I want you to see that I can manage responsibility more effectively and that your voices are important to me." With reassurances in words, deeds followed. Kody started by setting up an open family ledger, discussing budgets, savings, and future expenses out in the open. Every week, he asked family members to discuss money decisions and offer suggestions. Small wins came gradually. A teenager who had once shunned family planning hesitantly made suggestions for college funds. Another child inquired about investments, an indicator of involvement that was lacking for years. But Kody was aware that the process would not be quick. Once broken, financial trust is one of the most difficult things to repair. One mistake, one forgotten cost, might erase weeks of effort. In the face of such obstacles, the act of confronting previous errors directly turned out to be a turning point. By admitting the fiscal blunders that had hurt, Kody opened up a door, a hard, thin door, to forgiveness that had remained resolutely shut. Even as Kody struggled to repair relationships at home, another sphere of stress hung over his head. Public opinion for years. Each stumble, each courtroom saga, and each family argument had been amplified under the lenses of cameras, social media, and dedicated sister wives viewers. Also now, as he worked to regain the trust of his children, he knew that the world outside their home still had a say in their family. One afternoon, while assisting his children with their homework, a notification appeared on a family tablet. An article blasting Kody's parenting choices went viral. The kids caught sight of it. Their eyes tightened. Questions spilled out. "Dad, is that true? Did you actually do all of that?" Kody hesitated, the burden of decades of criticism bearing down on him. "I know the news has a knack for making things worse than they truly were," he told them softly. "But I know you'd want to question me. I've done wrong, but what counts now is what we do from here on out." The discussion wasn't simple. Teens were particularly doubtful, having learned negative headlines and viral footage posted online. They questioned if their father's actions at home were real, or merely another show for the cameras. Kody recognized that restoring credibility was based on sustained behavior, not solely speech. He began by disconnecting social media from family conversation, capping exposure to online criticism, and establishing private spaces where his children could speak without critique. In tandem, he initiated a personal process of introspection, writing in a journal, therapy sessions, and honest talks with trusted family members helped him see how public judgment had affected his actions and how to protect his children from its worst impacts. Although these measures were taken, the specter of public judgment remained. Each excursion, each financial choice, even trivial arguments seemed magnified, making Kody reserved and sometimes reluctant. But gradually, he saw small gains. When one of the children spoke of pride in a personal victory instead of dwelling on public scolding, It was a sign that the family might be able to take back some agency over their own story. Kody understood that the journey towards mending was not only about fixing the past, it was about working towards resilience against outside influences, making his children feel safe in their home, and demonstrating to them that there could be refuge at home no matter what was happening out in the world. Not every move forward was easy. Although some of Kody's kids started to slowly open up, one of his older children, let's refer to her as Meri, was still aloof. Her trust had been extensively broken through the years, and no matter how hard Kody tried, she wasn't yet willing to forgive. On a quiet evening at the family living room, Kody attempted to make conversation. "Meri, I need us to start over," he said, his tone measured but hopeful. She scrunched up her face, arms folded. "Start over, Dad. You've said that before. I've heard promises broken, and I don't know if I can believe anything anymore." Kody's conscience was pricked. He knew he had been lacking in emotional ways money or grand gestures could not fix. But he did not quit. "I know I've done wrong, and I don't want you to forget about it," Kody said softly. "I just want to show you that I am willing to make things right, step by step." For the next few weeks, Kody worked diligently at regaining her trust through small, repeated gestures. He volunteered to assist with school assignments, showed up for extracurricular activities, and honored her boundaries without insisting on interaction. He also broached the idea of family therapy sessions, hoping that a third party would facilitate Meri's expression of emotion, without being criticized or judged. These sessions were tense, bursting with raw emotion, tears, and lengthy silence. But Kody sat patiently, hearing without defensiveness. Gradually, Meri softened. A shared moment during a family game night, her laughter over a silly board game mishap, hinted that connection was possible again. Undefined, it wasn't a full reconciliation, but it was progress. Kody realized that some wounds took longer to heal than others, and forcing forgiveness would only backfire. Rather, he promised to be there consistently, reliably, and unconditionally, hoping that time would slowly mend the bridge. By seeing his children's hurt and respecting their limits, Kody realized that respect and patience could sometimes be louder than any apology. Kody was aware that words were not enough. Actions, experiences, and memories were necessary to re-establish a connection with his children. He started making small, deliberate plans that would lead to acts of joy and trust. He planned a family camping trip one weekend. Not the fancy adventures of yesteryears, but plain, earthy, just sleeping bags in the open, roasting marshmallows and campfire tales. Maybe at first the kids were standoffish, some sitting in the distance, swiping on their phones or reducing conversation to monosyllables. Kody didn't push interaction. He worked his way quietly, setting up tents, starting the fire, and lending aid when it was needed. By the second evening, things began to change. One of the younger children, obviously thrilled, asked Kody to tell a story. Kody started with a humorous anecdote from his childhood, interspersing humor with implicit lessons about error and improvement. Laughter by the fire was at first hesitant, then more sincere. Kody saw the stares between siblings, their shared laughter bridging some of the tension that had long been present. He also started small family traditions, such as a weekly gratitude circle, in which everyone would say one good thing that had happened in their week. It wasn't perfect, but it was about creating connections. Even Meri, who was normally quiet, finally spoke up, noting a small win at school. Kody understood that rebuilding trust did not come in the form of grand gestures or costly vacations. It was about consistently showing up, being present, and respecting each child's uniqueness. Each smile, each tellable, was another brick in the tenuous foundation of reconciliation. By the end of the camping trip, there was a subtle but palpable shift. The kids were more cooperative, more pleasant to be around, and even started discussing common recollections of previous trips, good and not so good, without hesitation. It was a small conquest, but to Kody, it felt like Mount Everest. He knew these moments, no matter how brief, were the seed of a slowly developing relationship. Any time it seemed Kody was gaining ground, something would happen that would threaten to unravel the tentative ties he had begun to repair. One afternoon, a skirmish broke out over something that appeared trivial, a disagreement about school project responsibilities and visiting schedules. The tension grew rapidly. Voices were raised, tears were cried, and anger simmered over. Some of the children felt caught in the middle and withdrew altogether. For the first time in weeks, Kody felt the burden of past errors weighing on him. He knew that his overtures for reconciliation were still tentative. The children's trust was easily broken, and a single misstep would feed old fears and resentments. Kody stepped back, aware that responding defensively would do more harm. He chose to stop, think, and come at the problem in humility. Rather than pushing for a solution, he promoted open communication. During a moment of quiet, Kody sat down with his oldest daughter, allowing her to talk without being interrupted. He actively listened, validating her feelings, and acknowledged where he had failed. Previously, it caught her off guard that Kody admitted fault so publicly. It wasn't normal for him to do that. He applied the same method to the rest of his kids individually, providing a safe environment where they felt they could vent frustrations without being judged. They eventually started talking, airing feelings they had suppressed for years: anger, disappointment, and fear. Kody did not attempt to fix everything at once. Instead, he focused on validation, showing that he understood and respected their feelings. It was painful, but necessary. For the first time, some of the children nodded in agreement with his perspective, seeing a father who was willing to change, even imperfectly. By the evening, the household atmosphere had shifted again. Although the setback had been enormous, Kody was aware that moments of tension could be lessons too, as long as he faced them with patience, empathy, and sincerity. After weeks of emotional turmoil, Kody knew he had to take firm action to prove to his children that his intention to change was genuine. Finger promises weren't enough anymore. He needed an action that would show commitment, dependability, and true concern. Kody chose to hold a weekend family retreat, a blend of playfulness, introspection, and closeness. He arranged events that would present each of the children with opportunities to excel as a unique individual, as well as engage in a sense of teamwork. From outdoor activities to arts and crafts, the retreat was specially crafted to maintain a balance between play and quality interaction. The reactions were initially lukewarm. A few of the kids were cynical, wondering if this was just one more try that would come to nothing like previous commitments. Some were afraid, but still interested. Kody didn't coerce. He only prepared the ground, allowing them to decide whether or not to engage. The weekend kicked off with an easy exercise. Every child told a personal anecdote that they had never shared with Kody before. These were real, emotional, and sometimes excruciating tales. For Kody, hearing without interrupting was an exercise in humility and patience. Each confession and each tear added to his realization of the effect of his previous choices on their lives. Later, through a team-building exercise, Kody and his youngest children were together for a task that involved communication and cooperation. Gradually, tension gave way to laughter, and the children finally saw, for the first time in months, a version of their father who was supportive, attentive, and present. Kody also took a moment in quiet to write separate letters to each child. In them, he was thankful, apologized once more for previous errors, and laid out his dreams for their future relationship. These letters weren't grand speeches. They were heartfelt promises, personal and specific. By the end of the weekend, a noticeable shift had occurred. Walls of distrust had begun to crumble, replaced with cautious optimism. The children saw that Kody wasn't just talking about change, he was actively living it. The retreat didn't erase the past, but it planted seeds of hope. Kody knew that restoring trust would be a process involving time, patience, and consistency. But the weekend demonstrated that success could happen when effort was paired with sincerity. With each passing day after the retreat, Kody recognized that restoring trust was not an event, but a continuous commitment. His children, still guarded, started to push the limits. Some shunned more in-depth discussions, others insisted on autonomy, and some even questioned explicitly if their father had indeed changed. Kody greeted these challenges not with frustration, but with patience and persistence. He was available without being intrusive, listened attentively, and honored their boundaries. Small gestures became the foundation of a larger transformation, helping with homework, attending school events he had previously skipped, and being present for everyday moments that mattered more than grandiose displays. One evening, during a family dinner, a moment occurred that Kody had been waiting for. a quiet acknowledgement from his eldest child. "I can see you're trying," they said, their voice steady but sincere. "It is going to take time, but I think you can change." It wasn't a forgiveness in totality, but a bridge, a connection severed now beginning to heal. Kody understood that the journey was not about erasing the past, but about demonstrating through action, day by day, that he could be trusted and loved in return. His attention shifted from needing approval to building consistency, patience, and understanding. Even in the weeks that followed, small victories were achieved, laughter shared, quiet words spoken, and moments of real joy. Kody started seeing the potential for a relationship to be rebuilt. Not flawless, but real. The journey ahead remained long and uncertain. But one irrefutable truth had been established: the connection with his children, previously broken, was now well on its way to healing. With humility, diligence, and unshakable devotion, Kody had begun the journey toward a new future, in which family could reclaim strength, trust, and bond. Kody Brown's quest to rebuild with his children was not over yet by any means, but for the first time in a very long time, hope was tangible, and in the smiles of those closest to him.